Oh my goodness, I'm just gonna record this, and this is gonna be chaos, and I'm just gonna have to live with the chaos. So here goes. Here goes nothing. Hi everyone, my name is Kelly, and welcome to the Game Is Over podcast. This YouTube channel has been a long time in its making, and maybe I should have taken more time, because this is just, like I said at the beginning, this is going to be chaos. I'm starting a podcast. Well, let's just say I'm restarting my podcast. I started an audio-only podcast back in 2022, October of 2022, and I put some episodes out there, maybe 36, 37 episodes, I can't remember. And to be honest with you, they're gone. They're not on audio, they're not on this podcast network anymore. Like, they're not on Spotify, they're not on Apple Podcasts, because I quit paying the fees that somebody was putting them out to the airwaves for me. So I'm restarting this podcast on YouTube and doing a video podcast now, in hopes to reach more audience members that I need to reach. And you might ask, what is the Game Is Over podcast? What's it all about? Well, to start with, my name is Kelly. I'm a compulsive gambler and a video game addict. And that means that I'm in recovery for both of those things. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to reach out to people to help them. And I feel that I have a voice, the voice that needs to be heard for just taking video games out of my life. And what this podcast is really about is about my journey of taking video games out of my life. What that means. I'm going to share my successes. I'm going to share my failures. I'm going to talk to you about what those failures have meant to me. And I've had a few failures already in terms of quitting video games. There's been lots of hurdles and lots of things to overcome. And I can't say that I've overcome them all. But at this point, I'm at the point where I'm making a YouTube video. And to just go back a little bit, my first podcast called The Game Is Over podcast, and I'm naming this the same thing, when it was on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other podcast networks, it was about my journey of taking video games out of my life. And at one point I wanted to make the YouTube video. And when I had decided to go onto YouTube with it, I recorded an episode, basically the whole thing. The audio portion went to the airways, but I never got the video portion out there. And I can't tell you, I can tell you why. The basic reason was that I got scared. I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't know what I'm doing, so hence the chaos here. And because I didn't know what I was doing, I went to the video and started editing it, and I said, no, I don't want to do this. And maybe I was scared. Maybe deep down, I was scared of what people would think of me. Oh, who's this 50-year-old guy on YouTube talking about his video game addiction? Well, I'll tell you right now, I think this is needed. What I'm doing is needed. People need to be out there and recognize when there's a problem in their life. And I can't say that I've recognized all my problems, but I can say that video games were a problem for me. And I can tell you right here, right now, why I think that. Some of the details about my history of video game playing and what brought me to this point will come in future episodes. But for right now, just the bare bones of it, the bare bones of it is that when I played video games, I escaped into a different world. But when I was escaping into that different world, I ended up neglecting some of the duties that I had in life as a father, as a husband, as an employee. Some of the things that I did were not here's me in a nutshell. Just to back up once again, sometimes I am lost for words. So this podcast, if anything else, is going to be real. It's going to be authentic, and this is going to be the real me. This is who I am. And yes, I'm going to evolve and I'm going to become more talkative. But I'm going to be able to do that my own way. So sometimes my thoughts are going to be jumbled around a little bit, but that's just the way it is. And when I'm just speaking here into the microphone, into the camera, into talking to you guys, and I really love how this is going so far. I'm 5 minutes in, and I haven't stopped the camera again. And before this, there was a lot of stopping of the camera and say, "Oh, restart. Oh, restart. Restart. I didn't like it." Well, who cares? And that's how the first podcast began, and I began to get more comfortable and more comfortable, and that's what this is all about too. I have to get more comfortable. So there's been a few things that I really want to say about why I need to do this. And I don't like to see people getting hurt. I hurt some people with my video game addiction, which actually led to a gambling addiction, which then I really hurt some people, and I really hurt my financial situation with the gambling problem. And then I recognized that my gambling was a problem back in I recognized the gambling was a problem well before I stopped. Let's just put it that way. Well before I stopped. But when I tried to stop, the measures I put in place didn't work. And when I finally reached out for help and started to talk about my problem with somebody, that's when things started to change. In retrospect, what I really wanted to gain from why I'm creating these YouTube videos, why I'm creating this podcast once again, is I want to help people that are maybe suffering. People like me, maybe people younger than me, that are engrossed in video games and they don't know how to get out. Maybe people with families, like I have had a family, and they have lost some of their family because they either end up in divorce or they get exile is not the word, but once again, that's the word I remember. I can hear in my head. They're segregated from their family some way, shape, or form, and they segregate themselves. They're in their basement and they're just playing video games endlessly. And I don't want to stereotype people that play video games. Video games are good for people, especially some people with learning disabilities. Video games can really help with that a lot. There's people that make money out of playing video games. There's a lot of that going on. And I, for one, at one point thought we could make a lot of money playing video games and competitively. I thought, well, that might be a way to go. Hence, I was just engrossed in these video games, and it ended up being neglectful of my family. And like I said, it ended up being a gambling addiction where the video games weren't enough anymore. And I ended up in the casinos and escaping in the casinos instead of escaping at my computer desk at home when my family was having dinner or my family was asleep, etc. So I recognized that gambling was a problem early enough, and I quit gambling back in 2019, January 4th, 2019 to be straight with that date. And I have found 12-step groups help me a lot with that too. GA helped with that. And once I started entering recovery, I started to change myself. I started to recognize that there's a power within me, that power being somebody that can talk about this problem openly and honestly. Share my vulnerabilities. I'm really going to have, here's my mind thing, I'm really going to have to change this lighting. Look at that. There's a lighting spot right there. I need to figure that out a little bit. Looks like I got a big white spot on my forehead. Regardless. The gambling. It got really bad. I lost a lot of money. I hurt a lot of people. And I didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. And in recovery from that, I recognize that I am able to be vulnerable and open and share about who I am and what this has meant to me. And I hope the same for everybody. Because I have a genuine kindness towards everybody. Yeah, it's caught me in a few traps when I've been too kind to people and they've taken advantage of it. But I've learned to recognize when I'm being, like, I just love people, and I love figuring people out. And I may say some things that are a little bit controversial sometimes. Hopefully I don't say too many things. But not that this is a controversial stuff. That's just my mind going off in a different direction again. Again, utter chaos. Let's just leave it at that. And this is not going to be polished by any sense of the imagination. And I may not even edit this very much at all, because I love the reality of this. Me just sitting here talking. And I'll get more into what my recovery has meant for me, what it's done for me, and what I've enjoyed doing since then, all the different things that have brought me to this point. I mean, I need to mention them at this point. Some of it is like some of the people that have come into my life, people in my recovery circles, have been super important to me. I wanted to better myself. I wanted to better my public speaking for some reason. Back then I thought it was, well, yeah, I had in my mind that I wanted to be a motivational speaker, and maybe that's still going to be my ultimate destiny. I don't know. So I joined Toastmasters, and I'm surrounded in that group of Toastmasters, a bunch of really gung-ho, go-get-'em kind of people. For the most part, it's a really wonderful group, and I've learned lots from them. And I wouldn't be able to sit here today and start this podcast on YouTube, for that matter, without bettering myself. First walking into that recovery room, first asking for help, putting up my hand and asking for help. I wouldn't be able to be here at this point. And I keep telling myself, yeah, Kelly, be present. I have work to do. There's a reason why I'm still here. I better start this YouTube channel while I still can. And I hope that this is going to help somebody. And to be honest with you, if it helps only one person, it's worth it. And I'll tell you right now, it's helping me. Because that's another reason why I need to continue this podcast. I have recognized that when I do a podcast like this, when I'm helping others, I feel good in my heart. And when I feel good in my heart, that makes me do more better things for myself too. So this is a little bit of a self-care kind of a thing for me, this podcast. Power of the pause. Not that powerful. So at this point, I've been off and on video games for quite some time. I've been trying to quit it for, like, even before I quit gambling, I was trying to quit playing video games sometimes. But at this point, I'm about 73 days from playing video games. I don't know the exact date because, like, when I did my podcast, when I was doing my podcast, I had before the Game Is Over podcast on Spotify, Apple Music. It's probably not there again. Whatever. The original version of this podcast, I had quit video games for at least 6 months. And then I had a self-sabotaging moment. And I went back to playing video games and saying, you know what? Oh, I should have silenced my phone. Another note to self. Silence phone before jumping into the podcast. I'll just silence it right now before it does that again, because once one message starts, another one starts. There it is. I may edit that out. I may not even do any editing. Where was I? See, that distracted me. So many distractions. the original Game is Over podcast. I had at least 6 months. Maybe I had gotten up to 9 months. I can't even remember. And the self-sabotaging moment where I felt lonely or bored or tired or all three, or hungry, one of those things. And I even wanted to quit my recovery from gambling. I even tried to go to a casino and let myself in and gamble. And luckily I wasn't allowed in because I had a self-exclusion, and we'll get into that in a future video. Note to self. But because I couldn't go gambling, what did I do? I did the next best thing for me. Go play video games. Go drown my sorrows, drown my loneliness in a video game for that night. And that led to a few weeks, maybe even a month or two, of playing video games every day again. And I didn't like myself during that time. I could see myself slowly declining. It wasn't healthy. Now, I've gotten into a lot of different things in this podcast, but that's what this podcast is going to be about. Me being real with you. And I hope this helps. And like again, it's going to help me because it keeps me accountable. I am not going to promise when future episodes are going to be. I don't know. Let's just do it this way. I do have in mind how often I want to do episodes. Right now, my goal is to do at least once per week, but I'm not going to hold myself to that right now. I'm going to be kind to myself, because that's what I've learned through this whole process, is that I need to be kind to myself. And what that means is that I'm going to commit to an episode once every 2 weeks. Maybe let's just do 2 episodes per month. So we're at the end of January, so you can expect another episode in 2 weeks if you enjoyed this one, and I hope you did. I will edit it and put on some fancy music, maybe put some titles here and there, and do it from there. So once again, thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And this is my tagline, and I used it in the original Game is Over podcast, and it still fits today. I love this tagline. Remember, be kind to yourself, as I have done, and continue to do. But also, be kind to others, because you never know what somebody else is going through. Thank you and good night, everybody. Have a safe day. I don't know. Sounds good. Bye, everyone.